Disney used to be the king of magical movies. But lately it feels like it's just been remaking everything with real actors, tons of CGI, and somehow way less heart. Sure, some of them made a lot of money, but most just left fans confused, bored, or angry. So what went wrong? And is there any way Disney can fix this mess? Let's begin with what might be the most talked about flop in Disney's recent history. Snow White. This remake is a whole mess. And what's crazy is that most of the drama started before the movie even came out. Like, the internet had already made up its mind months before the release, and honestly, it's not hard to see why.
More of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
The original cartoon came out in 1937.
First up, the casting. Disney chose Rachel Zegler, who had just blown up in West Side Story in 2021. She's clearly talented, no doubt about that, but the second she started doing press interviews about Snow White, things got awkward real fast. She openly said she never really liked the original 1937 movie, called it weird, said the prince was basically a stalker, and made it sound like the story needed a total rewrite.
With a guy who literally stalks her.
Weird.
Now sure, everyone's allowed to have opinions, but when you're playing the main character in a remake of a beloved classic, maybe don't trash the original that made it famous. That rubbed a lot of fans the wrong way. Instead of building excitement, her comments made people worry the movie would ditch everything they loved. And it wasn't just the prince part. Rachel also said her version of Snow White was not going to be saved by a prince, and that this Snow White is a leader and dreams of being a leader instead of dreaming about love.
Will she rise or bow her head? Will she lead or just be led?
That's fine if it's a different story. But at that point, fans were confused whether it was even Snow White anymore, or just a totally different movie with the same name. Then came the dwarf situation, or actually the non-dwarf situation. Disney announced they were moving away from the traditional 7 dwarfs to avoid stereotypes, but instead of keeping the spirit of those characters and updating them with care, they went with a group of magical creatures that were super random. Some were tall, some short, different races and genders, which is fine on its own, but fans were like, where's Grumpy? Where's Dopey? Where are the actual dwarves? People felt like Disney was changing too much to be politically correct, and in doing that, they erased what made the story special. Even Peter Dinklage criticized the project. He said Disney was being hypocritical. They were casting a Latina Snow White to be diverse, but still using an old fairy tale with outdated ideas. So basically, no one was happy, no matter which side of the debate you were on. And then the set photos leaked in July 2023. And they were bad. Like, really bad. The costumes looked like cheap Halloween outfits. The fake forest set looked like it was made in someone's backyard. And those 7 creatures standing in for the dwarves, people were stunned. Fans, critics, and random internet trolls all came together for once just to roast Disney. People started calling it woke white and joking that it looked like a school play. YouTube, Twitter, TikTok all lit up with hate. Videos criticizing the remake started pulling in millions of views. Influencers were calling it unwatchable before it even dropped. And the worst part? Disney didn't really do anything to change people's minds. There were no big trailers or strong responses to the backlash. The studio just went quiet, which made things worse. And then they delayed the movie by a whole year, from March 2024 to March 2025. That's usually a sign that something behind the scenes is seriously wrong. Whether it's reshoots, re-editing, or just panic at how bad the early response was, it clearly wasn't going well. The movie somehow became the poster child for everything people hate about modern Disney remakes. It's kinda wild when you think about it. Snow White was the very first Disney animated feature ever back in 1937. It basically started the whole Disney empire. And now, in 2025, its remake might be the one that crashes the entire remake trend. Instead of being a celebration of the original, it turned into a PR nightmare. And it wasn't even the first time this had happened, just the most obvious one. Now, let's be honest, Disney didn't always mess up with these live-action remakes. They had some real hits at the start. They weren't perfect, but they brought something fresh to the table, and people were here for it. It all began with Alice in Wonderland in 2010, directed by Tim Burton. This movie was like a weird, dark take on the original animated classic. Burton's style was everywhere: the quirky, twisted visuals, the strange characters, and, of course, Johnny Depp's over-the-top performance as the Mad Hatter.
Stop that.
While it divided critics, audiences loved it. It had a unique flavor, and people were curious to see what Disney could do with other classic stories. It made over $1 billion at the box office. That success planted the seed for Disney to go crazy with remakes. After all, if one movie could make that much, why not try more? Then came Maleficent in 2014. Now, this one was clever. It didn't just retell Sleeping Beauty. It flipped the whole thing on its head. Instead of a straightforward villain, we got to see Maleficent's backstory, her betrayal, and the complex layers that made her who she was. Angelina Jolie was perfect as the iconic villain. She gave the character so much depth, and people loved how the story made you feel for her instead of just hating her.
Glittering assemblage, King Stefan.
Maleficent ended up making $760 million worldwide, which is still a solid number and proof that Disney's new strategy could work when executed well. Then, in 2016, Disney gave us The Jungle Book. This was a big one. The movie featured stunning CGI and brought the jungle and its animal characters to life in ways that felt real but still magical. The heart of the story was still intact, and the voice cast, with names like Bill Murray and Idris Elba, brought so much personality to the characters. It felt alive. The movie made $967 million and critics praised it. Disney had struck gold again. By 2017, they hit us with Beauty and the Beast. Emma Watson as Belle? A no-brainer. The songs we all knew and loved were brought to life with a fresh twist, and the world building with the big-budget production design was impressive. It wasn't as groundbreaking as The Jungle Book, but still solid. The movie made $1.26 billion at the global box office. At this point, Disney had a winning formula and was riding high. But then, things started to fall apart. In 2019, Disney got a little too cocky. Instead of taking their time and carefully picking projects, they dropped Dumbo, Aladdin, and The Lion King all in the same year. That's a lot of pressure for any studio, and it's where things started to get bumpy. Let's talk about Dumbo first. Tim Burton returned for this one too, but something about it didn't click. The movie was dark, creepy, and, well, kinda depressing. The CGI was great, but the tone was way off for a story about a flying elephant. The plot felt all over the place, and critics weren't impressed. It barely made $353 million against a $170 million budget. When you consider how much it cost to make, that's a big miss for Disney. Then came Aladdin. This one made over $1 billion, so it technically did well. But let's be real, something felt off about it. Will Smith as the genie? He tried his best, but it was impossible to replace Robin Williams, and the CGI magic wasn't the same. The live-action dance numbers were cringy, and the whole thing just didn't have the same charm as the animated classic. It was fun, but it wasn't amazing. People were divided. But The Lion King of 2019, now that's where things got weird. First off, it was huge. It made $1.66 billion worldwide, and on paper, that looks like a huge success. But when you actually watch the movie, things felt off. The visuals were breathtaking, the CGI animals were insanely realistic, but that's where the magic stopped. The animals couldn't show any emotion, so when Mufasa dies, it's not nearly as heart-wrenching as it should have been. Watching lions with no facial expressions didn't quite hit the same as animated characters. It left a lot of fans disappointed, even though the box office numbers said otherwise. And then Disney's streak of movies really started to kick in. Mulan in 2020 was next. It was supposed to be this epic live-action adventure, but they took out all the fun stuff. No Mushu, no songs. The film had a more serious, authentic vibe, but it fell flat. The magic was gone, and critics tore it apart. On top of that, the movie made headlines for filming near controversial locations in China, which created even more bad press. People didn't watch it, and it was released on Disney Plus during the pandemic, so that didn't help either. Then there was Pinocchio in 2022, which went straight to Disney Plus and was an absolute disaster. Tom Hanks played Geppetto, but he looked lost, and the CGI was weird. The film didn't have any of the charm or excitement of the original, and the reviews were brutal. People trashed it left and right. It barely made a dent in the streaming world, and it wasn't even close to being a nostalgic hit. Then, a year later in 2023, Peter Pan and Wendy came out, and it barely made any noise. The whole thing felt like a rushed project with no soul. Barely anyone watched it, and the few who did weren't impressed. Just when you thought Disney might slow down, they hit us with another one, Lilo and Stitch. The original was quirky, emotional, and deeply rooted in Hawaiian culture. It was about found family, loyalty, and yes, a chaotic alien with a heart. So how did the remake go? Well, it made money, but at what cost? Let's start with the ending, because Disney changed it. In the original, Lilo and Stitch stay together in Hawaii. A bittersweet but heartfelt resolution that honors the theme of sticking with your family even when things are tough. But in the live-action version, Lilo leaves. She moves away to chase her dreams. Stitch goes with her. And Ohana, the entire emotional core of the movie, is reduced to a tagline. Fans were furious. Disney stripped away the soul of the story and replaced it with a Pinterest quote about personal growth.
Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten.
Then there's the casting. Social media lit up over Nani being portrayed by a much lighter-skinned actress than in the animated version. That's clear erasure of Polynesian features in a story that's literally about indigenous Hawaiian identity. And it didn't stop there. Jumba, the eccentric mad scientist alien, they made him darker, not just in tone, in lighting, mood, and behavior. He's more villain than chaotic uncle now. And Pleakley, his goofy, gender-fluid charm from the original, gone. In this version, his cross-dressing and campy flair are basically erased. Disney played it safe, toned it down, and made him boring. That's not an update, it's a sanitization. But here's the deeper issue. The live-action version pushes the narrative that to find your future, you have to leave your home. That Hawaii is something you grow out of, which is a wild message to send in a film about indigenous people, especially when so many native Hawaiians are already being pushed out of their homeland due to rising costs, land grabs, and tourist exploitation. This is one of the most quietly imperialist things Disney's done in years, and they're not wrong. In a world where cultural authenticity matters more than ever, that feels incredibly tone-deaf. Yes, the live action made decent box office returns, but ask the fans, they'll tell you it looks like a tourist postcard. Glossy, artificial, and missing the heart. Because Ohana means family, and family means nobody gets left behind. Unless it's the plot, the tone, and the culture, then it's apparently fair game. So yeah, what started as a promising trend quickly became something fans started avoiding. We all know something went wrong, but what exactly happened to turn Disney's golden touch into a series of lackluster remakes? Well, there are a few significant problems. First off, they're just lazy. Look, Disney isn't exactly trying to reinvent the wheel here. Instead of coming up with fresh, creative ideas, most of these remakes are just a lazy rehash of the original animated classics. They're literally copying and pasting the same storylines, but instead of hand-drawn characters, you get real actors and a ton of CGI. But here's the thing, we have already seen the cartoon. Why would we want the same story again with less charm and energy? It just feels like they're milking nostalgia without adding anything new. Second, way too much CGI. CGI can be a great tool. It's fantastic for creating breathtaking visuals and special effects. But when every movie feels like just one giant computer-generated spectacle, it loses its magic. It feels like you're watching a video game rather than a movie. We get it, you have the technology, but does that mean every single scene needs to be filled with hyper-realistic but soulless CGI? It's a fine line, and Disney's been crossing it too often. Third, casting and PR messes. This is a big one, and it's something Disney needs to improve. A lot of the time, the casting choices just feel off. Sure, they have big names like Will Smith, Angelina Jolie, and Emma Watson, but not every casting choice works. Sometimes it feels like Disney picked actors for star power rather than the right fit for the role. And then there's the whole PR disaster side of things. Take Rachel Zegler and her comments about Snow White as an example. When the lead actress goes around trashing the original film, it's a major red flag. It's not even about whether you agree with her, it's about the fact that she's going into a movie that fans adore, bashing it publicly, and then expecting people to get excited. It kills the vibe. And finally, it all feels like a cash grab. Let's face it, Disney's not making these remakes because they're dying to tell these stories in a new way. No, they're doing it because they know people have an emotional connection to these classic films and hope that nostalgia will drive ticket sales. It's all about the money. Fans can tell when a movie is just trying to cash in. Honestly, it's hard not to feel like Disney is just recycling these stories to meet quarterly earnings rather than actually trying to make something special. There's no heart in these films anymore. It's like Disney has forgotten how to create magic and is instead focusing on how to make a quick buck off an established franchise. When that's the vibe, it's no wonder these movies feel like hollow remakes rather than fresh takes. Can Disney somehow turn things around with these remakes, or are we stuck with a never-ending cycle of lifeless reboots that no one asked for? Honestly, that's the question on everyone's mind. With all the recent missteps, it's hard to see a clear way out, but they're not stopping anytime soon. In fact, Disney has a long list of upcoming live-action remakes ready to hit the big screen, and it's not looking pretty. First up, we've got Snow White. Next up is Lilo and Stitch. Fans are already in a frenzy over the casting of this one, with many feeling like it's another case of Disney making choices that don't feel right. Lilo and Stitch isn't some ancient tale begging for a remake. The original is beloved, and many fans are asking, why fix something that isn't broken? The casting complaints aren't helping, and the excitement for this one isn't exactly through the roof. Then there's Moana, which is mind-boggling in its own right. Moana came out in 2016, and we're already talking about remaking it. Seriously? It hasn't even been a decade and Disney's already planning to rehash it. Moana was fresh, fun, and culturally rich, so it's hard to imagine how the live-action version will offer anything better. Is there really a need to revisit it so soon? Fans are starting to wonder if Disney has just run out of ideas, and if that's not a bad sign for the future of their remakes. But wait, it gets weirder. Bambi and the Aristocats are also on the horizon. The question is, who actually asked for these? Sure, the original Bambi from 1942 is a classic, but it's also a film that's deeply tied to a certain era and tone that's hard to replicate in a live-action format. And the Aristocats? A charming movie, but it wasn't exactly crying out for a remake. Now, Disney could still make some excellent live-action remakes if it actually cared. It's not like they've completely lost the plot. The problem is that they rush through these projects without considering what makes these stories special. They're focused more on the financial side of things than on truly crafting something new or meaningful. If Disney slowed down, took their time, and picked stories that really needed an update, they might have a shot. There are plenty of older animated films that could benefit from a fresh take or new technology, but they need to be approached with care and respect for the original. They don't need to completely reinvent the wheel. They need to add something that makes them relevant today while still capturing the magic of the original. The key is balance. Keep the charm, the heart, and the nostalgia, but give it a modern twist that feels earned, not forced. Another thing Disney could do? Use real sets and practical effects instead of relying on CGI for everything. CGI is okay for some parts, but there's something about a tangible, real-world set that makes a film feel grounded. That's how the original animated classics were made. Going back to those roots could be a way to recapture the magic. But right now, instead of rethinking their approach, it's like they're doubling down on what isn't working. They keep pushing these remakes no matter how much the fans complain. The thrill of hearing about a new live-action remake has gone. People are getting tired. They're not as excited to see their childhood favorites come to life anymore. Now, it's more about whether the remake can live up to the original, or worse, if it'll somehow make a mess of a beloved story. So is there hope for Disney's live-action remakes? Maybe, but it's gonna take a fundamental shift in their approach. If they don't start taking these projects seriously, the live-action remake train will come off the rails. The future? It's up to them, but right now, it doesn't look too bright. What do you think of this whole situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more interesting content.